I sold my companies to Warner Brothers in 1967. And I went over to Europe for a 3-week vacation and didn't come back for 3 years. It was great. I lived in London, Paris, Rome, Stockholm. It was a great time in my life. I was a young guy. And when I did come back after 3 years, I decided I wanted to try my hand at movies and television. So I start pounding the pavements, trying to get somebody to use one of my songs in their movies. And I was told, you know something? You better take on the score. It's going to be tough to just get them to do the song. You have to commit to doing the score for the movie. Well, I didn't have that kind of training. So I hooked up with a friend of mine at the time called Perry Botkin. And he was an arranger. So the arrangement I made with him is, look, you help me with the dramatic score using your arranging capabilities. I'll write the songs, and we'll just split the whole thing down the middle. And that was our agreement. And I went out trying to get us a gig. I finally got lucky with a famous producer-director called Stanley Kramer. And we did a picture called RPM about college revolution with Anthony Quinn and Anne Margaret. And it was kind of a contemporary film, and that's, I think, the reason he chose me, because he wanted the contemporary feel, and a lot of composers at the time were more classically oriented. Anyway, we did the score, and Melanie, I don't know if you remember her, she did 2 of the songs, and it was a great experience. Nothing much happened with the film, and not that much happened with the music. The next time I heard from Stanley Kramer, he said, I'm doing a movie called Bless the Beasts and Children, based on a book by Glendon Swarthout. It was about a bunch of misfit kids at a summer camp who try to free a herd of buffalo. They witnessed their counselor shooting these buffalo. You know, they have buffalo hunts once a year, and they were determined to save these buffalo. So Stanley was shooting the picture at the time. He sent me a script, and finally, when he came back from shooting, a videotape of it. And I went to Lake Arrowhead. I had a place in Lake Arrowhead where I used to go away for the week and write. And so I went there with my wife Jalinda, and for the purpose of writing the songs for Bless the Beasts and Children. So the first thing I did is I wrote this beautiful melody, and then I really loaded the lyric with all the terrible things we're doing to children and animals, how we take advantage of them. And then the next day I listened back to it, and it just didn't work. Here was this beautiful melody, and here I was pointing this finger at everybody. Look at how we're taking advantage of children and animals. So I threw the whole lyric out, and I started again, and I made it a simple blessing. That's all the song is. You know, bless the beasts and the children, for in this world they have no voice, they have no choice. It was that simple. And that worked for me. So I took it back to LA. I played and sang it for Stanley. He loved it. I said, this is great. So now I had to figure out, okay, who would be a good person to record it? So at the time, the Carpenters were huge. And I called Stanley up and I said, Stanley, I know who can do this song. He said, who? The Carpenters. And Stanley said, who's the Carpenters? I said, well, watch the Grammys this Friday and you will know who the Carpenters are. He called me the next week. He says, I want the Carpenters. I said, all right. So I arranged a meeting in Stanley Kramer's office. We met with the Carpenters and their manager, and I'm just feeling real good about myself. And Stanley is a very charismatic guy, and he was talking about the picture and all that. And this Richard Carpenter, who was a lovely guy but very serious, said, well, Mr. Kramer, it sounds really interesting, but what it comes down to us is if we think it's a hit, we'll record it. If we don't, we won't. Well, suddenly I wasn't feeling so good. Suddenly this whole thing hung in the balance. Were they going to think the song that I thought was so good, were they going to think it was a hit? So now I really felt vulnerable. Anyway, they left. I went in and did a demo. And I got it to Stanley. Stanley called the manager and said, we want to take this demo of this song to the Carpenters. And the manager said, well, they're appearing in Las Vegas. He said, fine, we'll go to Vegas. And the manager got back to Stanley and said, well, Mr. Kramer, you might as well just send it to Vegas because they don't want to listen to the song in front of you and Barry. That would be awkward. They want to listen to it on their own time. Stanley says, that's all right. I still want to go to Vegas. That was Stanley. He was a great guy, a wonderful man, became a dear friend. So he said to me, come on, we're going to Vegas. So we went to Las Vegas. We met Richard Carpenter in the lobby of the hotel. He said hello to us, took the demo, and went back to his room. Well, now Stanley and I had time to kill. We were going to go see the Carpenters that evening. So we went to the tables, where we proceeded to start losing a lot of money. Stanley more than me. Anyway, we got so engaged in losing money that we managed to miss the Carpenters' performance. So when we figured that out, we rushed into the dining room. The show was over. Oh my goodness. So we went backstage, and the only one backstage was Karen Carpenter. And so we lied. What a great performance, Karen. We loved it. You guys were terrific, And we talked for a while. She said nothing about the song. Well, I knew what that meant. They didn't like it. I was crushed. Anyway, we left. We went to the coffee shop to have some dinner. And while we're sitting there, I see the Carpenters come in with their little entourage. And I waved. They waved back. And then they took a table on the other side of the room. I said, that's not a good sign either. Anyway, so Stanley and I are sitting there feeling a little depressed. We're losing money and it doesn't look good for the Carpenters. Next thing I know, Richard Carpenter is standing in front of the table. Mr. Kramer, Barry, we listened to the song, and I said, here it comes. And we think it's a hit. We want to do it. Well, I have never used that much restraint in my life. I wanted to jump up on that table and go, yes! But I didn't. We said, well, thanks, Richard. Great. And then he left, and I looked at Stanley. He looked at me. We high-fived. It was a great moment. We finished our dinner. We went back to the tables, and we won everything back and more. We didn't get back to L.A. till 5 in the morning. And it was a great time, an experience with one of the legends in movie business, Stanley Kramer, and I was a young guy, and I just loved that guy, and I think he counted me as a friend as well. And it was just one of those wonderful days and nights, and the Carpenters were going to do the song. Well, they did the song, the movie came out, it wasn't that successful, but Bless the Beast and Children was a huge success with the Carpenters. In fact, I was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Song, which I didn't win, but at least being nominated on my second picture was such an honor. And it was a great night, even though I lost. Now, this story has an even more interesting place to go, but I'm going to have to save that for another time.